The sharp sound of laughter echoed through the crowded school corridor. It was the kind of laughter that wasn't kind, the kind that cut deep and left invisible scars. A group of students huddled together, pointing fingers, whispering cruel words that could be heard by anyone passing by. And right in the middle of it all stood Aisha, her hands clutching a worn-out notebook to her chest, her eyes fixed on the ground. She tried to ignore them, but the words came at her like sharp arrows. Look at her shoes. They're so old. They're almost falling apart. She still wears those simple dresses. Don't you think it's time to change? Who even talks to her? She's from such a poor family. Aisha's heart pounded, her throat tightening with every insult. But she held her silence, hoping it would end soon. This was not the first time, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. In a school where most students flaunted expensive gadgets, brand clothes and stories about glamorous holidays, Aisha's simple life was an easy target. She remembered the day her parents had told her they couldn't afford to buy her new clothes or fancy shoes. They barely managed to pay for her tuition. Her father worked 2 jobs, and her mother cleaned houses in the neighborhood. Yet they never complained, and neither did Aisha. She was proud of her family, proud of their hard work, even if it meant she couldn't fit in. But fitting in was all her classmates seemed to care about. One boy, who had been especially cruel, stepped forward, sneering. "Why don't you just go back to where you belong? You don't need to be here with us." Aisha swallowed the lump in her throat and walked away, her footsteps echoing softly in the hallway. She didn't cry, not here, not in front of them, but inside the pain was real. That day, as the final bell rang, Aisha felt heavier than usual. She sat alone on a bench outside the school gates, watching the cars pass by, the rich kids getting into shiny vehicles, chatting and laughing. She wondered what it would be like to have that life, to never worry about money, to be accepted. Little did she know, her life was about to change in ways she never imagined. A few months later, Aisha found herself standing in a small, crowded cafe near the city center. It was a place she often visited to escape the noise of her home. The cafe was old, with chipped paint on the walls and mismatched chairs. It smelled of strong coffee and freshly baked bread. Here, she felt invisible, which was sometimes a comfort. That afternoon, as she sipped her tea, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from her childhood friend, Zara. They hadn't spoken in a while. "Aisha, you have to come to the school reunion next week. It's going to be big." Aisha hesitated. The last time she saw most of those classmates, they mocked her. Why? Would she go now? But something inside her nudged her. Maybe it was time to face the past. She agreed. The day of the reunion arrived. The hall was decorated with balloons and fairy lights. Old classmates hugged and laughed, sharing stories. But when Aisha walked in, a hush fell over some groups. She noticed the same mocking smiles from before, now mixed with surprise. "Is that really Aisha? She looks different," whispered one girl. Aisha smiled politely, ignoring the whispers. She had changed, not just in appearance, but in confidence. She had grown stronger. As the night went on, Aisha met many old friends, some warm and welcoming, others distant and cold. But then, something unexpected happened. A tall, well-dressed man approached her. His presence was commanding but gentle. He introduced himself as David, a businessman from overseas. He told her he had heard about her story, how she had overcome struggles and never given up. David was charming, kind, and intelligent. He listened when Aisha spoke, really listened, something she had rarely experienced. Over the weeks that followed, they kept in touch. Life with David was a whirlwind of new experiences. From fancy dinners to trips abroad, Aisha found herself in a world she had only dreamed of. But despite the glamour, David was always down to earth, treating her with respect and kindness. Her old classmates, on the other hand, watched from a distance, some with envy, others with disbelief. They couldn't understand how the girl they had mocked was now living a life they only wished for, One day, at a charity event, David held Aisha's hand in front of the crowd. "This is my wife," he announced proudly. Gasps filled the room. The same classmates who had laughed at her before now stared in shock. Some tried to hide their surprise. Others couldn't believe their eyes. Aisha felt a mix of emotions, joy, disbelief, and a strange sense of justice, but her journey was far from over. Just when things seemed perfect, a dark secret began to surface. Rumors spread that David's success wasn't as clean as it appeared. Whispers of betrayal, business rivalries, and hidden enemies crept into their lives. Aisha found herself caught in a world she didn't understand, where trust was rare and danger lurked in the shadows. She had to fight, not just for her happiness, but for survival. The news hit Aisha like a thunderbolt. Rumors about David's business dealings weren't just idle gossip. They were growing louder, more persistent. The headlines in newspapers hinted at corruption, betrayal, and even criminal investigations. The man who had once seemed so kind, so strong, was suddenly under a cloud of suspicion. Aisha sat in their lavish living room, the walls decorated with expensive art, but her heart felt empty. She stared out of the window, watching the rain fall, as if the grey skies reflected the storm brewing inside her life. "David, what is happening?" she asked. Quietly, when he returned home that evening, he sighed deeply, removing his jacket. "It's complicated, Aisha. Some of my business partners have turned against me. They want to bring me down." "But is it true? The things they're saying?" Her voice trembled. David looked at her with tired eyes. "There are parts of the truth, but much of it is lies. People want to destroy me, and anyone close to me." Aisha's mind raced. She had come so far, fought so hard to build this new life. Could it all fall apart now? Days turned into weeks. The media storm didn't fade. Paparazzi surrounded their home. Reporters knocked on their door, hoping for a statement. Friends stopped, and calling, afraid to be associated with scandal. Even David's closest allies seemed to distance themselves. Aisha felt isolated. She wasn't sure who to trust anymore. One afternoon, while David was away on a business trip, Aisha received an unexpected visitor. It was Zara, her childhood friend. "I'm here for you, Aisha," Zara said softly, pulling her into a warm hug. "I've heard what's happening. You don't have to face this alone." Tears welled up in Aisha's eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. They spent hours talking, remembering old times, sharing fears and hopes. Zara reminded her of the strength she had inside, the strength that had carried her through poverty, bullying, and loneliness. "Don't let them break you," Zara said firmly. "You're stronger than this." That night, Aisha couldn't sleep. She thought about David, the man she loved and the man she barely knew now. She wondered if the life she dreamed of was just a fairy tale. Suddenly, a noise downstairs startled her. She grabbed her phone and quietly moved to the living room. Through the window, she saw a shadowy figure moving near the back door. Her heart pounded. Was someone trying to break in? She called David but got no answer. The power went out and the house was plunged into darkness. Fear gripped her, but she remembered something David had taught her. Stay calm. Be smart. She found a flashlight and quietly locked herself in the guest room. The intruder tried the front door but found it locked. After a few minutes, footsteps faded away. Aisha waited until morning before calling the police. The officers arrived and took her statement seriously. They told her to be careful, that someone might want to intimidate or harm her and David. The next days were tense. Aisha didn't leave the house much. She kept looking over her shoulder, waiting for the next threat. Then, an unexpected letter arrived, no return address. Inside was a note. "Stop asking questions or you'll regret it." Aisha's hands trembled as she read it. The warning was clear. She wanted to run away, hide forever. But she couldn't. Not now. She had to find out the truth. David finally came home. He looked exhausted, but relieved to be with Aisha again. They talked late into the night. "I know someone is trying to destroy us," David said, "but I promise I will protect you." Aisha nodded, her fear slowly turning into determination. Together, they decided to dig deeper into the business deals, the accusations, and the people behind the attacks. Days later, Aisha found herself in a dimly lit office, poring over documents and emails. She wasn't a business expert, but she could spot lies and inconsistencies. One name kept appearing: Marcus. He was David's former partner, a man with a reputation for ruthlessness. Aisha learned that Marcus had been quietly building a secret alliance to take control of the company and to ruin David's reputation. The more Aisha discovered, the clearer it became. This was more than a business rivalry. It was a battle for survival. One evening, while reviewing files at home, Aisha's phone rang. The caller ID was blocked. A cold voice whispered, "Stop digging, or you'll face consequences." Aisha's hand froze over the phone. But she didn't. "Hang up. I'm not afraid," she said firmly. "You won't scare me." The line went dead. Aisha shared the call with David. He was worried but proud of her courage. "We need to be careful," he warned, "but we'll get through this together." The days that followed tested their resolve. Aisha had to navigate a world filled with lies, betrayals, and danger she never expected, but her spirit refused to break. Meanwhile, back at her old school, news of Aisha's troubles spread fast. The same classmates who had once mocked her now whispered in shocked tones. "How did she get mixed up in all this?" one asked. "Maybe she's not as innocent as she seemed," another replied. But others felt guilty. They remembered their cruel words, the way they treated her. Some wondered if they had missed the chance to befriend someone truly strong. One afternoon, Aisha received a message from an unknown number. It read, "Meet me at the old park tomorrow. At noon, I have information that will help you." Aisha debated whether to go. Was it a trap? Could she trust this stranger? But her desire for the truth was stronger than her fear. The next day she arrived at the park, a quiet place filled with trees and benches. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting shadows. A man in a dark coat waited near the swings. He looked nervous but determined. "I'm Alex," he said quickly. "I used to work for Marcus. There are things you need to know." Aisha listened closely as Alex revealed secrets, illegal deals, fake documents, and plans to destroy David's company. "It's bigger than you think," Alex warned. "Marcus is dangerous. You have to be careful." Aisha felt a mix of fear and hope. Finally, she had a lead. Returning home, she shared everything with David. They realized they had allies, but the enemy was close and powerful. Together, they made a plan to fight back, to expose the truth and protect their lives. But the battle was only beginning. The days that followed were some of the hardest Aisha had ever faced. The secret meeting with Alex had given her hope, but also fear. She now knew how deep the danger went, and how powerful the enemies were. David and Aisha spent every moment together, planning their next steps. They hired a small team of trusted investigators and lawyers. Every call, every email was carefully guarded. The battle wasn't just for money or power, it was for their lives. One cold morning, as Aisha sat by the window sipping her tea, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello," she answered cautiously. A low voice whispered, "You should stop now. This is your last warning." The line went dead. Aisha's hands shook. She looked at David, who was standing nearby. He clenched his fists. "They're not giving up." But Aisha was not ready to quit. The company's annual meeting was coming up. Marcus and his allies planned to use the event to try and take full control. David needed to be ready with proof to clear his name and expose Marcus's lies. Aisha suggested something risky, to confront Marcus directly and surprise him with the evidence they had. David hesitated. It's dangerous, but it might be the only way. Together they prepared. Aisha went over every detail, memorizing files, rehearsing what she would say. The day of the meeting arrived. The room was full of shareholders, business partners, and media. Cameras flashed as Marcus took the stage, smiling confidently. When David stepped forward, the room quieted. Aisha stood behind him, steady and strong. David spoke first, calmly but firmly, revealing the evidence of Marcus's corruption and betrayal. He showed emails, fake contracts, and proof of illegal payments. The crowd gasped. Marcus's face turned pale. He tried to interrupt, but the evidence was overwhelming. Suddenly, a security guard whispered to David, "There's someone trying to get in." David nodded and quickly finished his speech. The door opened, and a man burst in, armed. Chaos erupted. People screamed and scrambled for cover. David shielded Aisha behind him. The man shouted threats, demanding Marcus be arrested. Security tackled the intruder before he could do harm. But the message was clear. This fight wasn't over. Aisha's heart raced. She realized this was no longer just a business conflict. It was a war. After the meeting, Aisha and David retreated to a safe house. The police were involved now, offering protection and investigating threats. Despite the danger, Aisha felt a strange calm. She had faced bullying, poverty, and loneliness before. This was just another challenge. One evening, as they sat by the fire, David took Aisha's hand. "I don't know what the future holds," he said softly, "but I know one thing. I want to face it with you." Tears welled in Aisha's eyes. For the first time, she truly believed in their future together. Meanwhile, back at the old school, news of the dramatic events reached Aisha's former classmates. The ones who had mocked her simple life years ago whispered with disbelief, "Did you hear? Aisha's husband is being attacked." One said, "She's braver than we thought," another admitted quietly. Some felt guilt for the way they had treated her. One girl, Layla, sent Aisha a message. "I'm sorry for what we did. I never believed in you, but you're amazing." Aisha didn't respond. She had moved on, but the battle wasn't just outside, it was inside her heart too. Aisha struggled with trust. Could she believe David completely? Was there more she didn't know? One night she found an old letter from David's past. It hinted at secrets he hadn't shared. She confronted him gently. David sighed. "There are things I haven't told you because I wanted to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Aisha asked, hurt. David looked away. "From the full truth about how I made my fortune." Aisha felt betrayed. The man she loved wasn't who she thought. Days of silence followed. Aisha needed space to think. She remembered her old life. Simple, honest, but full of struggle. Was this new life worth the price? Then came a sudden turn. One morning, Aisha received a package at the safe house. Inside was a small box and a note. "Trust no one but yourself." Inside the box was a flash drive. Curious, she plugged it into her laptop. It contained videos and documents, proof of illegal deals, hidden enemies, and someone close to David working against him. Shock and confusion overwhelmed her. Who could it be? Determined to find answers, Aisha decided to investigate herself. She used contacts from David's team and old friends from her past. One lead brought her to a quiet cafe late at night. There, a woman named Nadia waited. Nadia was a former employee of David's company who had turned whistleblower. "I'm the one on the flash drive," Nadia confessed. "I wanted to expose the truth." "But why?" Aisha asked. "Because I believed David was being betrayed from within. Someone close to him is leaking information to Marcus." Aisha listened carefully. This was bigger than she thought. back. At the safe house, Aisha shared what she learned with David. They realized that a spy was in their midst. Trust was fragile. David said, "We have to find out who it is before it's too late." The next days were tense. Aisha watched everyone closely. She felt the weight of betrayal pressing on her, but she refused to give up. One night, she overheard a conversation between two of David's employees. Whispers of money, plans, and betrayal filled the room. Aisha's heart raced. She recorded the conversation secretly. The voice belonged to Marcus's ally inside David's company, armed with proof. Aisha and David confronted the traitor. The man tried to deny everything but broke under pressure. He confessed to working with Marcus to ruin David. The fight was far from over, but Aisha and David had won a critical battle. As calm returned, Aisha found herself reflecting on her journey, from a simple girl mocked by classmates to a woman standing tall in a world of danger and power. She thought about the lessons she had learned. Strength comes from inside. Trust must be earned. And no matter where life takes you, never forget who you are. The battle had been long and exhausting, but Aisha and David stood stronger than ever. After uncovering the traitor in their midst and exposing Marcus's dangerous schemes, the dark cloud seemed to lift, at least for a while. Still, the scars from the struggle were deep. Trust had been tested, fears had been faced, and every step forward was hard-won. The first quiet morning in months, Aisha woke up early. The sun poured softly through the curtains. For the first time, she felt peace. She looked at David, still asleep beside her, his face calm after the storm. Aisha thought back to everything, the mocking classmates, the poverty, the lonely nights, and the painful journey into a world of billionaires and secrets. How had she come so far? David stirred and opened his eyes, smiling at her. "Morning," he whispered. "Morning," she replied, squeezing his hand. They both knew the fight wasn't over, but they were ready for whatever came next. The next weeks were filled with rebuilding. David's company regained stability after the scandals faded from headlines. Law enforcement arrested Marcus and several others for fraud and corruption. The media shifted their tone from suspicion to admiration for David's courage and integrity. Aisha became a quiet hero, though she preferred to stay out of the spotlight. She volunteered for charities helping women and children, giving back to the community that had once supported her through hard times. One afternoon, Aisha received an invitation to her old school. It was unexpected. Reluctantly, she accepted. She arrived to find a room full of familiar faces, some awkward, some curious, and a few genuinely sorry. Layla, the girl who had once mocked her, stepped forward. "Aisha," she said softly, "I want to apologize. We didn't see you for who you really are." Aisha smiled gently. "It's okay," she said. "I forgive you. We all have our own journeys." Her words surprised many. "I hope you can learn from my story that no one is simple, no one is weak." The room was silent, but the message was clear. Back home, Aisha and David sat on their balcony, watching the city lights flicker below. "Do you ever miss your old life?" David asked. Aisha thought for a moment. "Yes," she said honestly, "but I don't miss the pain. I miss the simplicity, the honesty." David nodded. "We can build a new life, one that has both strength and kindness." Aisha leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm ready," she said. Then came the moment Aisha had waited for, sharing her story with the world. With David's encouragement, she agreed to write a book, her story of survival, love, and resilience. The process was healing. Every word brought back memories, but also lessons. She wrote about the mocking classmates, the cruel words, the loneliness. She wrote about the love that saved her, the battles they fought, and the truth that finally set her free. The book became a bestseller. People from all over the world connected with her story. Many wrote to her, sharing their own struggles and hopes. Aisha realized her journey was not just her own. It belonged to anyone who had ever been judged or pushed down. One evening, as she signed copies at a book event, a young woman approached her. "Thank you," the woman said. "Your story gave me hope." Aisha smiled, her heart full. "You are stronger than you know," she told the woman. "Never let anyone tell you otherwise." As the years passed, Aisha and David's love grew deeper. They faced new challenges, but with courage and honesty. Aisha never forgot where she came from, the simple life, the struggles, the pain, and she used her voice to lift others up. The lesson: life is not about where you start, but how you choose to move forward. People will judge, mock, and doubt you, but strength comes from within. Trust yourself, believe in your worth, and never let others define your story. True success is not wealth or fame, it is the courage to be yourself, to face your fears and to rise above. Aisha's journey shows that even the simplest life can shine brightest in the darkest times. Her story is a reminder: no matter who you are, you have the power to change your destiny. The end.